Okay, so welcome along everybody. My name's Kerry. Lovely to have you with me today for our workshop on writing up your thesis. And we are going to get started right now. And just to begin, I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QT now stands. We pay respect to their elders' laws, customs, and creation spirits. We recognise these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning, and QT acknowledges the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QT community. Okay, so I have actually just put the slides up on Blackboard. So there is a lot of information today. So you do have access to the slides right now, and I'll pop the recording up either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. You will get an email with all that information. Alrighty, so today we're looking at strategies to connect your thesis chapters. That's one of your big jobs at the moment with your writing up, if that's the stage you're at. We also want to clearly demonstrate your contribution to the field, and also we're going to look at what examiners will be looking for as well. Lots going on. As usual, you can see there, you will be having a peer discussion in a little bit. We'll have time for a Q&A at the end as well. All right, so just to get you thinking, what do you think examiners are going to be looking for in your thesis? If you can jot down one or two aspects of your thesis that you think that the examiners are going to be looking for. This question relates to one of our learning goals today. So we will be talking about it further, but what do you think? If you want to, you can pop something in the chat if you want to, or just write down something in your notes. So some key elements of your thesis that you think examiners will be looking for. So you can start thinking about that. So in yesterday's UniHub event email, the reminder that comes out the day before all the events, it has today's activity sheet. There are 2 activities. Do you need me to pop that into the chat, or does everybody have it? Someone's popped in the chat looking for originality and cohesiveness. Yes, they most definitely are, examiners. All right, I can put the, one second. All right, and someone in the chat, we've had the examiners are looking for theoretical contribution and looking for the novelty of the research. Nice. Yes, you are 100% right. All of those things. So we're going to start reflecting just to begin with. That's in that activity sheet. You'll see there, that's activity 1. I'm going to give you some time in a second to write some notes, but just, as I said, if you can keep the document open and just put some points in there as we go through. And you can see there, current knowledge gaps and obstacles. So you're reflecting on what more do you need to know and learn in this period? And then what are the strategies that you're going to implement to overcome those those obstacles and increase your knowledge. Now, maybe you know everything and have no obstacles. That's fabulous if that's you. But I would say for most of us, we can think of a couple of things. You know, you might not fill the whole sheet up, but you should, I'm sure everybody would have a couple of things that they just know that they need to think about and work on in this last stage. So to begin with any reflection, it's good to think on where you're at right now, okay? Now, everyone's at a different stage of candidature. I am assuming that most of you are near to the end, but it's okay if you're not. The activity sheet, I've just popped it into the chat. Did you get that? Let me know if you still haven't got it. It is in that email that UniHub sends out, but that's okay. I've popped it in the chat. Did you guys get it okay? All right, no worries. Just one sec. Okay, so remember when you started, you were a novice researcher, you didn't know as much as you know now. So you've already come a long way. So you can factor that into this reflection as well. But the things I want you to think about is whether you're staying connected with your peers, with your supervisors. Are you nurturing that sense of belonging with your faculty, with your school, with QUT? Are you seeking feedback from a range of people? Could you increase the range of people that you're seeking feedback from? What about your writing strategies? Are they working? Are you productive? Do you need to be more productive? Are there barriers stopping you from being as productive as you want? So even though this reflection now is to say that there's still some things you need to work on, that's completely normal and okay. This is a training degree. You're not meant to know everything. And when you're doing the reflection, you don't have to focus only on writing. Of course, there'll be other things that'll come into your mind, which is fine. Just remember you're writing those how you're going to complete the degree, isn't it? So here's an example of my writing up period that might help you a little bit with your reflection. So at the point, so let's call this the last 6 months of my candidature. I was still no good at using EndNote. I went to a lot of library workshops. My brain just didn't compute with that. Anyway, I had good intentions. Supervisor feedback. I had to do a lot on my methods. I thought my methodology chapter was fantastic. They didn't. So that was something I knew I needed to prioritize to get that right. I had a lot of ideas around how to present my findings. Each plan A didn't work, plan B didn't work, plan C didn't work. So I had to really spend some time on that. Formatting the tables in my document, again, hard. I had to ask my friend to give me a bit of a lesson on that. Takes time. I needed to add more into my lit review. My boss wanted me to teach more, but I had to say, sorry, I've got too much. This is a really important time. So that's just to give you an idea. Yours could be completely different to this, of course. I'll go back to that slide if you want to, but basically this reflection, just spend 3 to 5 minutes I'll give you now to think about current gaps in your writing skills, your understanding of the thesis quality, any obstacles. It doesn't have to be just about writing. There might be some other things. So be honest with yourself right now. You've come to this workshop. There's, you want to know some information, you want some tips, some strategies. So think about where you're at exactly and what you need to improve or what actions you might need to take. All right, let's keep going. So we are having some key themes to look at as we progress through the session and for you to think about as you progress through this last stage. Here they are. So a lot of where you're at is about staying motivated and keep on building your confidence. It's time to take control of the writing process. Of course, I'm always talking about seeking feedback and also be informed. There's so much information on HiQ that you can use to really understand the expectations of your thesis. So we'll look at these as we keep going through. So, as I said before, you've come so far. Be proud of what you've done and be excited about this last part of the journey. This is going to be a great achievement. It's going to be recognition of all your hard work. So if you can keep that motivation going, I know it's tiring near the end, but this is the great part. This is the fruition of all your hard work now. So if you can keep reflecting and managing any obstacles that are coming up, that will help keep that motivation and confidence. And of course, keep on improving your skills and your drafts, and that will then in turn increase your confidence, of course. So think about where you're at right now, how you are feeling. Are you confident about your findings and your writing skills? Hopefully you are feeling on track. But as we can see from that image there, things happen, you know, that you might not be expecting outside of university as well as within your research as well. And if you're not feeling as motivated as you think you could, what are some strategies that you can put into place to turn that around? And one thing is to go back to the start and think about, well, why were you excited about this research in the first place? So if you want to pop in the chat or just in your reflection there, you know, why did you decide to do this research degree in the first place? And I'm hoping those motivations are still there, even if they're deep inside and been buried. Let's bring them back up to the surface and remind ourselves as to why we're here. You know, what was it that compelled you to come to QUT and do a research degree? That might help you to get some excitement back. Does anyone want to add into the chat? So why are we trying to keep ourselves motivated and confident? Because there's a lot to do. It can be an up and down roller coaster ride, can't it? There's so many things that you're juggling at the same time. So how do we keep this stress manageable? So also, if you want to write in the chat any tips that you have about minimizing stress, here's some strategies that we can look at is having an achievable writing plan. So have in your diary written when you're going to write, where you're going to write, and what you're going to write. So in the chat, we've got the motivation was to add new knowledge to Queensland history in the Bjelke-Petersen era. Interesting. So keep that at the forefront of your mind. You're nearly there. So also to keep stress manageable, just be aware of how you're feeling and think about it and see what how you can address. If you're feeling tired, if you're mentally tired, maybe having a day off can lead to higher productivity the next day. I would really encourage you to talk to your supervisors. They can help you. You know, how much you want to share with them is completely up to you, of course, but if they can't help if they don't know. And we all have commitments outside of our studies. So it might be a time where for the short term, is it possible to minimize some of these extra commitments that you might have? Maybe no, particularly children, they're going to be there, of course. But other than maybe minimizing your family, which you don't want to do, maybe there's some other things, some other commitments that you can temporarily not necessarily stop, but reduce just to help you at this time to spend every minute that you can getting this degree completed. So taking control of the writing process. So what I'm saying here is that nothing's changed. You know, you still need to read, write, seek feedback and revise. That process is always the same. You still need those messy drafts to get the quality we need. So again, taking control, plan regular writing sessions, plan specific time to proofread. Proofreading and writing aren't the same thing. We need to separate them out. Try writing sprints, free writing. We talked about this in the writer's block workshop that was on Tuesday. All of that is on Blackboard. Exactly that link I put in for you before. The writer's block resources are there as well. So we talk a lot about the philosophy and the pedagogy and the evidence around writing sprints and free writing. The other thing with your planning, as you probably know by now, sometimes things take a lot longer than we expect. So we need to plan for that and just persevere. All right. Writing and thinking go together. The answers will come. Take control of the writing process. Let it go with those messy drafts. Then come back and have a plan to revise. Okay, so in the chat, we've got a really lovely motivation about researching a disease that caused parents to die. So, yeah, that motivation's always going to be there, isn't it? Thank you for sharing in the chat there. So with part of taking control of the writing process, you need to improve any of the skills that are still needing to be refined. So research into writing, this is quite recent, 3 main reasons why HDRs experience writing anxiety: lack of confidence, lack of writing skills, and lack of time. Now we can address all of those and they're all linked. Planning to make the most of your time, getting feedback to improve your skills. And the more you write, the more feedback you get that's positive will increase your confidence. So they're all tied up together. So seek feedback, please do, especially at this time, and be honest to yourself about aspects of your writing you need to develop. Ask your supervisors what they think and then work on those things. We can reduce this anxiety by prioritizing improving our skills, and self-efficacy is understanding where you need to improve and then putting an action into place. So tied to taking control is obviously feedback. I talk about this so much because it's true. To get in the reader's shoes, you need to seek feedback, especially now. Now's not the time to hold back and not want to share your writing. You need to get that feedback on the readability. So yes, it's not nice if we get perceived negative feedback. If you think the feedback is negative, it's negative about the document, not about you. Try not to take it personally. We want to keep that confidence going. So any feedback you get that's saying this needs to be improved, think of this as a positive thing that's going to get you towards your goal of submitting this thesis. We want to improve the readability, and you can't do that without feedback, okay? And also, you've got shared goals. You and your supervisory team want you to complete. So some strategies around seeking feedback regularly and widely. Don't rely on just your supervisors. You've got other people in your life, and I know you don't want to send them an entire thesis, but you can send them little pieces of the thesis. Peers, family, friends, get a network of readers who you trust. And it doesn't matter if they're not experts. We're looking at the readability. Is your message getting across in a clear way? Maybe you can find a writing buddy. What did we call it the other day? An accountability partner. Write together, discuss challenges and successes, give feedback to each other. That's a win-win. And also keep in mind with your supervisors, it's a big document. You'll need to put into your planning how much time they need for that whole thesis draft. So you're probably sending them chapters, but at some point, I think they're probably going to want the whole thing, and we need to give them plenty of time. So factor that in. We do have HDR writing peer feedback sessions if you're sort of struggling to get that network of readers, or even if you're not. We had one yesterday. I can see in that image there, I know, 23rd of November. There is one more for 2022, and they're coming back in 2023. So please come along, bring a section of your writing, and you will get some focused and actionable feedback and meet some nice peers at the same time. So the fourth strategy is being informed. Everything you need to know about the process of writing up and submitting is all on HiQ. You can see our tiles there. Training workshops is where you find all the training, obviously. Engaging with industry is about internships, which is a really good opportunity if you have a chance. Planning your career, now's a good time. We have lots of fabulous career workshops, and we've got a new one. I don't know if you've seen that one, the health and well-being. That's a really great lot of information and activities there as well. Might be a good time to pop in and have a look at that one. So everything's there. Now, the one that really about your submission is the one, your candidature, up the top there. Everything you need to know is there. And if you do go into your candidature, you'll see this information. I'm going to pop this link into the chat. So be informed. Make sure you know all the steps and what you need to do. So you can see there, writing, editing, presenting, lodging. So do you know QUT's thesis requirements? So in that information, there's a list of what is the expectations from QUT. So we're going to have a quick look at those. The thesis needs to make an original and/or significant contribution. The methodology needs to be effective and appropriate. You need to have competence in the survey of literature. So of course, that's your lit review. It needs to be a required standard for external examination. So that's talking about thesis quality, which we'll look at shortly. Here's some more. Needs to be well written, adhering to writing conventions and style guidelines. So that's your referencing style. High standard of spelling, grammar, punctuation, and choice of language. You need your citations and reference list or bibliography. Correct, of course, and no typing errors. So write in your notes now. I'm going to go back to the previous slide as well quickly, but which of these requirements do you think you already have? Which ones do you think you might need to spend a bit of time on? So I'll just go back and have a look here. Your methodology should be all good. Your lit review should be all good. We might need to look further into what the quality is expected. We will look at that shortly. Your original and significant contribution might need to be articulated more clearly. That's something you can double check. Sometimes we leave the adhering to the referencing style. Sometimes we leave that to the end. Try not to do that. Try and, because it will take time if you haven't been adhering to that. So I would say that most of you would be well on track with all of these, which is a great thing because there's a lot, isn't there? Now, I don't think this little image is actually on HiQ anymore. I couldn't actually find it because they've updated it all on your candidature in that section on HiQ, but I've kept it anyway because I like it. So you can see there 3 months prior to lodgement, your supervisors will nominate examiners. You'll have your final seminar, usually 3 months prior to lodgement. Then you lodge, then you're under examination. Then you get your examiner reports. And then you submit your final thesis where you've addressed the comments. So that's a nice little image there that you can see the process. So all of this to look forward to. All right, well, we are right on time with our peer discussion right now. I really encourage you to make the most of this opportunity to engage with your peers. Here's my spiel as to why, the pedagogy behind it, trying to convince you active learning is good. Talking to your peers is good. Develops your evaluative judgment. And, you know, we learn by interactions with other people, don't we? Good question in the chat. When is the professional thesis editing done, before or after final seminar? I talk about this very quickly in a little while. So good question. Up to you. Talk about it with your supervisors. The thing is, if you do it before the final seminar, you might have to make some changes that the panel have asked you to make, but hopefully there won't be too many. So maybe it is good before the final seminar, but alternatively, you might prefer to wait for the lodgement. So yeah, good question. I would see what your supervisors advise. That's my best advice. All right, so we're going to go into our peer discussion. And remember at the start, I said, write down 2 key elements that you think examiners will be looking for. So that's question 1 to talk about. And if you have time, Discuss which chapter you're finding hardest to write and how you plan to address the challenges. Now, this is to get you thinking about our next topic. Now, before that, I just want to really quickly do a poll. This will give you something to talk about. My poll isn't working. That's interesting. Okay, sorry. Can you just put in the chat? Sorry. That's annoying, isn't it? I did set it up, but it doesn't want to work. Oh, it did pop up for you. Oh. Okay. Wow. I can't see it. Which, that's odd. All right. It might be easier just to pop it in the chat if you don't mind, because I honestly, I can't see it at all. So a lot of people saying discussion, results, discussion and conclusion. Anybody else? Methodology. Okay. All right. So hold that thought and you're going to go into your breakouts. All right. So moving on, let's look at connecting your thesis chapters. Keep filling out your reflection document as we go through. So there's some key strategies we're going to look at, and you'll see how they align with our key points and themes for the session. So the first one is about the writing a complete whole. So whether you're doing by publication, creative works, by monograph, you still need a document that is a complete whole. I know that they're different, of course, but there needs to be that whole thesis with that common thread throughout. And you're telling your research story. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. We need to implement big picture strategies. We're often very focused and looking at each individual section and chapter, which is important. But we need to step back and look at the whole document. Make sure you're keeping the reader in the loop every step of the way through that whole story and narrative. Make sure you've included everything you need in each chapter. And of course, we need to keep seeking feedback. So the feedback is going to be about each section and paragraph and the chapters, but also how it's looking as a whole as well. That's why you'll send that whole thesis document draft to your supervisors at some stage. I think that that's not going to work. Oh, no, it's right in the chat. Sorry, I thought I did another poll. No. So who is doing a thesis by publication or by creative works or by monograph? If you want to pop in the chat so we can see the range, because what we're talking about through this whole session would apply to all of these. Okay, we've got a couple of monograph, couple by publication. Yeah, all right, great. So a range, which is always the way, and it's good. There's a lot more people doing by publication. It was very rare not that long ago, but now a lot of people do that, which is fantastic. So adapt these strategies to fit your whatever you're doing. So your document needs to be a complete whole, all right, with a narrative, with a beginning and an end. Now that common thread is something we talk about all the time, isn't it? And it's your research problem, your aims, and your gaps. Okay, so they're going to be started in chapter 1 and then resolved by the conclusion. And we need to keep talking about them all the way through in every section, in every chapter. Now, I'm not saying every single section will allude to the problem, but at least one of those, either the problem, the aims, or the gaps. What is the point of the information you've given in each section? Link it back to your study every single time. That's what I mean by your common thread through the whole document. The fact there's a problem, you have aims, and you're also addressing some research gaps. This is a good quote. The well-structured thesis argues a well-substantiated case throughout and gives a sense of the coherence of the whole conceptual framework in action, each paragraph and chapter indicating where the argument is going and where it's been. It interweaves the themes and underpinning concepts, theories, and questions throughout. It takes the reader on a journey of discovery. I really like that journey of discovery. That's what you're doing for the reader. You're leading them through, putting it all out there and on paper so that there's no, they know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and then, of course, what did you find? So activity 5, that's also on your handout. This is a writing audit. You might have seen me show this before. I have adapted this. It is coming from ThinkWell, who have some fantastic resources if you want to pop onto their website. A lot of their resources are free. So basically I've adapted this one, and you can see there that I've got 2 columns, well, a few columns. First of all, how many words? That's a good way to track how much you've completed. And then what is my common thread in this chapter? So what is it in each chapter that needs to shine through? Is it the problem? Is it about, you know, addressing your aims? Is it about looking at also the research gaps? Maybe it's all of these. Okay, so obviously different chapters will have a different focus because, you know, whether you're looking at addressing the aims, so, or the problem, or also the gaps. But as I said, it could be all 3. You'll also have some feedback that you'll need to address, and then thinking about your deadline. Now, adapt this to what you need. And also the idea of the percentage completed, that's not to scare you, it's to help with your planning. So don't feel overwhelmed, but it is a really good way to think about and work backwards to your deadlines and work backwards to how much time you need to spend. So you can be jotting some notes down on that one as we go through. And why do the number of words matter? Really, as I said, it's for your planning. If you're looking about 80,000 words, you're not going to have all of your chapters at 10,000 words. You're going to have some that are longer and some that are shorter. So does that mean less time for each one? Potentially. Your MPhil would be similar. Of course, your intro and conclusion will still be the shortest chapters. So even though you might not be aiming for 80,000 words, it might be a bit less. Your PhD might be 100,000, you know. So even if you don't know for sure, you can sort of gauge, take a guess to help you to work out, you know, how much more time you need to spend on each chapter. If you are writing a thesis by publication, which quite a lot of you are, of course, you're going to have those research articles in there, but they also need to be connected. You're still going to need an introduction, a conclusion. You're still going to need a lit review of some sort. Whether you need those middle chapters or not will depend on what your supervisor wants you to do, but you still have to have that complete whole. I'm just going to pop in the chat so you can see down the bottom of that slide there, QT does have thesis guidelines for every kind, or the 3 kinds of types of thesis there. So pop into there and have a look to the one that applies to you. So you need to tell your research story, right? It's not fiction, but we need that beginning, middle, and end. It's a narrative where at the beginning, hey, there's this research problem. In the middle, you're providing the evidence for the problem, the gap, you're justifying your methods, and then the results is what you yielded from your fantastic research design. And in the end, discussion and conclusion, implications and recommendations. Your story does end, okay? Yes, ultimately we do need more research potentially, but you have a beginning and a middle and an end. So keep that in mind when you're telling your story. Your characters are all of your stakeholders, most specifically your participants, your theories, your data collection tools, your data analysis methods. So you've got all these people or things within your story that do play a starring role. Think of your chapters and sections as stepping stones. You're leading the reader through this beautiful narrative, through this very explicit story. So what would happen if one of your stepping stones is not fitting in, if it's not part of that coherent whole, if you're not talking about that common thread, then your reader will be stuck, won't they? They might even slip off into the water like this beautiful lady. And we don't want that. We want them to skip all the way across the story and get to your fantastic ending. So to do this, you need those big picture strategies, okay? So put this into your planning and keep that common thread in your mind. So write out the problem, the gaps, the significance, put them on your wall, put them on your fridge, put them in the bathroom, you know, wherever it is, just stick them up so they're always in the forefront of your mind, and make sure every single section comes back to one of those. Maybe you want to start writing your draft abstract. That's a really good way to help with the common thread. Another really good idea is give your supervisors a little mini presentation, 1 or 2 slides. That'll prompt some really good discussions around the findings, the conclusions, and where you're going, and making sure everything's connected. We always talk about the table of contents. I think that that's another really good strategy for you. Print it out. Are your subheadings clear? Is there a clear aim for each section? Do you fulfill the aim? You're advancing your argument, all right? As you continue through the sections and the chapters, you're extending on each point to then come to those final conclusions. When you are writing the conclusion chapter, go back and have a look at your introduction. Make sure that they are connecting. Your conclusion and your intro are mirrors. They do need to connect, and you're coming full circle. You started a study, you're finishing the study. This is quite a good resource, Handing in the PhD. Yes, it's a checklist. I'll put the link into the chat. It could be really something handy for you as you're, heading towards that submission. Always keep the reader in the loop. That's how we keep this story going. Keep them informed. Tell them what's happening. Tell them what you're thinking at every point. Make sure you've got beginning paragraphs at the start of every chapter, reminding the reader of the problem, of the aims. That's your common thread. Say how the chapter is informing those aims and research questions. And how are you advancing the argument in these chapters and also in each section. Always tell the reader at the start as well how the chapter's structured. You need them on board, all right? So we're going to look at all the chapters one at a time quite quickly. You do have the slides, remember. So if you need to go back, don't try to write everything down. Keep updating your reflection and your writing audit as we go through. And keep on thinking about all these strategies we've been talking about and how you can implement them. So you're going to have a title page. Make it a bit interesting, your actual title. Use keywords, use verbs. You'll have the page with all that information. Now, all of this is from the QT requirements that are on HiQ. You'll have your front matter, which is your table of contents, list of illustrations, figures, tables, abbreviations. I recommend a glossary of terms, which just means defining all those key concepts. You might have a list of publications, regardless of whether you're doing thesis by publication or not. So we're going to go quite quickly through here. So you will have the slides, remember, okay? So you can come back. And it's on HiQ as well. Introduction and lit review. You've really got to set it up real well in that introduction, don't you? What's the problem? What's the context, scope, gaps, but broadly. And then you give all the extra information in the lit review. You need to introduce the research design and give an outline of the thesis. And you're setting up that the need for the study, which then leads to the value of what the findings will be. So ask yourself, is the relevance and significance of the problem clearly explained and justified in your introduction? And then you give more evidence and more information in a lit review. Lit review is going to give all the details of those concepts, the theories, the connections between the concepts. You're going to restate the research problem. It's leading towards the formulation of the research questions or hypotheses. Remember your critical analysis. Are there challenges in the field at the moment? You'll need to explain those. And remember, your lit review is where you're beginning to provide evidence for the research design as well. Make sure you've included that. Who are the seminal researchers in your field? Ask yourself and make sure you've got them in the lit review. Research design or methodology, so important. You need to be 100% clear. Your reader needs to be able to undertake your research themselves if they want to. So have you clearly defined and explained the entire research design? Have you talked about limitations and explained how you're minimizing them? You need to connect the research questions with the research design. Do you need to talk about your role as the researcher? If you're a qualitative researcher, most likely you do. Do you need to talk about your worldview and how you think research and learning and knowledge is gained? Are you qualitative, quantitative? Do you need to talk much about that? So it needs to be completely transparent with enough detail that there's no questions about what you did. Make sure as well, ask yourself, is your data analysis strategy really explained well? Because that's something that often comes back from examiners. So make sure that's a really clear section. Research findings and results. Restate your research questions, your methods, and how the data was analyzed. You've got to remind the reader of this. You need a really clear structure. You need to be objective and balanced at this point. Not too much discussion, but planting the seeds a little bit. If you've got figures and tables, are they formatted correctly? Are they useful for the reader? Double check that. Are all the findings related to what you'll ultimately have in your conclusion? If they're not related, then maybe they shouldn't be there. Do you need to exclude some things because it's too long? Could you put something in the appendices? So just when you're looking at this part of your thesis, is that really clear and easy for the reader to follow? So that's how you're structuring it. You will need feedback around that. Discussion and conclusion. You need a clear evidence-based interpretation of what the results mean in the context of your field and bringing back to the research problem and the insights you've gained. You really need to also answer the research questions, of course, and your contribution to the field should be becoming clear and then lead nicely into the conclusion. Your conclusion is going to mirror the introduction and really highlight the value of your research. You've got recommendations. You're connecting the findings with the implications, clear recommendations, and usually there's some future research directions. The future research directions can all often link with the limitations. If you've got limitations in your conclusion as well as your methods, which you may or may not. If you are putting limitations in your conclusion, keep them brief, okay, and link them to the future study. All research will have limitations, and that's okay, but we don't want to dwell on them too much in the conclusion, but it is good to at least mention them. As long as that's what your supervisor wants, they may want you to only put it in the methodology. You can ask them. So that's basically what you need in each chapter, and then we need to remember they're connected. Remember our stepping stones. Lit reviews and methods are connected to justify. Lit review and discussion. Okay, so anything in your discussion should have also been mentioned in your lit review. The added bonus of the discussion is we've got your empirical evidence in there that's going to add to current knowledge. Of course, the methods and results are connected, which is why we need to remind the reader, these are the findings that have been yielded from the data that was collected in this way and analyzed in this way. And of course, your introduction and conclusion, we know they connect as well. Now, that was a lot. I know, I do understand that that was a lot. We do have our HDR Writers series where we go through each of the chapters. Now, everything is up on Blackboard. I'm going to give you the link in the chat, but they'll all be on again in 2023. We'll try and do some face-to-face as well. But that was a lot that we went through, I know. So if you want to go in a bit deeper, jump into the Blackboard and have a look at those. Or come in 2023, would be lovely to see you. Okay, so our next strategy, of course, is to keep seeking feedback. I know I'm a broken record about this, but it is so important. Don't be worried. You've got to seek that feedback. Okay, now, if the feedback is that your point is not clear, you haven't done your job, but that's okay. You can fix it. You can reword, add a sentence, add an example, add a table or a figure maybe. But unless you get the feedback, you're not going to know. And this is the time we need to know where we need to improve the document. And it's also up to you to, of course, keep developing your skills. How? Writing drafts and seeking feedback. I like this quote. The candidate, which is you, is the architect of the thesis and must take responsibility for personal shortfalls. So all that means is if there are things that you still need to do or get better at, you're the one in control of that. And we know there's all the resources here at HiQ, and you have your supervisors. Please, please stay in good communication with them. They are there to support and help you. So remember my reflection example. It was, I didn't know how to use EndNote very well. Now, we're going to look deeply into this bit about the methods chapter that I thought was my best. They didn't. So how are you going with your reflection? I don't know why that highlighting's there. It's a bit odd, sorry. So let's break some of this down. This is the exact feedback. Now, some of you will identify with this. This is my first full draft, by the way. Okay. So feedback on the lit review. Avoid old literature. E.g. 1998. She was talking about my theoretical framework, which was done in the 1990s. So that was a bit of a strange one because that was my theoretical framework. So I ignored that little bit of feedback, but maybe you're getting something similar. And potentially, I don't know, she came on board a bit late. And so that's probably why she didn't realize, but I did go back to my lit review to make sure I was very clear about why I was using this old literature, even though it's not old in my books. Methodology chapter. You need much improvement. That was devastating. I really did think it was my best. So overall feedback, this is a good one. Kerry, you write well. I did not find a single grammatical error. This is a big positive for you. Okay, well, lucky. Was she looking for grammar errors? I don't know. I felt like that was a really odd thing for her to say. Anyway, overall, The document needs refinement and structural adjustment to highlight the significance of the contributions your thesis is making. The good story is there, but not so explicit. So good advice, right? Even though she was wrong about the literature being old, even though I was horrified that my methodology chapter was bad, but she hasn't said it's bad, is it? That's what I took out of that, right? Needs improvement. So I automatically thought, okay, it's terrible. So here's some more. So this chapter 3 is the methodology chapter. I think you use convenience sampling rather than random sampling. Please check. She was right. Convenience sampling is where you recruit respondents who are accessible and available, which is what I did, not random. So lucky for her to pick that up. She had some other questions around the way I'd explained the structured interview questions. Why did I have these 2 different kinds of interviews? Why do both? So I had done those explanations, but not clearly enough, okay? So that was probably why she said it needed more improvement. The clarity wasn't there. Now, I wouldn't have known that if she hadn't have given me this harsh but constructive feedback. So that's my point, okay, is your supervisors are going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and they're going to really give you a lot of feedback, okay, but it's all to improve. There was a few other things she said, link the research questions to the aims, common thread, right? Be clearer about the case study site. What's your analytical framework? Remember I said that often that's not clear enough. That's the feedback that examiners give. Her idea was present in a figure, which I think I might have done. So all good ideas. So remember when she was saying, yeah, you need a lot of improvement. These were the sorts of things. So I had the information there, but it wasn't structured well enough and it wasn't explicit and clear enough. And in the end, with my examiner report, no changes to the methodology chapter in the end. So her being bad cop to me was worth it in the end, even though at the time it was not fun. So the moral of this story is feedback is necessary. They will see things that you can't see. At the same time, you're going to sometimes think, oh, that's not fair. I've worked so hard. Rise above, stay focused, discuss it if you're not sure, and remember, everyone wants you to submit a quality thesis. All right, so one of the things we saw about the quality thesis is demonstrating your contribution to your field. It must be explicit and clear. So this is from the QT guidelines. The main purpose of graduate research study at QT is to encourage independence and originality of thought in the quest for new knowledge. Okay, so this needs to be very clear in your document, the value of your study. So at the same time, on the flip side, it's a PhD, not a Nobel Prize. Okay, Einstein won at least 1 Nobel Prize, but you don't need to be Einstein. You will find answers. Your research will make a contribution. It's okay if it's small. It can still be significant. It's going to be significant for your stakeholders, isn't it? Okay. Your reader's going to be interested in your field of study. You need to keep it going. So be clear, have that interesting narrative, and keep persuading the reader of the value of your research. The contribution will be there. We just need to be explicit and clear and set it up all the way through. Keep writing your drafts, keep seeking feedback. You're learning, you're finding your way, you're developing all your skills, and part of that is finding that original contribution. So the research problem is the starting point. It's the key, okay? So from the very first page, we need to persuade the reader, this problem is urgent, it's challenging, it's having negative impacts. We need to resolve it, and my study can yield some insights to help do that. Right from the very first paragraph, there's a problem. You need to be really clear. By the end, hey, here's some recommendations and implications of this study that we can implement and help to resolve this problem. So how do we do this from the very first page? Articulate the problem in the abstract and the introduction. Use that as a starting point. Work hard to persuade the reader and make them care. Okay, and that problem is the common thread through all the sections. If there's no research problem, why are you doing the research? Of course, there's a problem. It may not affect everybody in the entire world, but it doesn't have to. It's affecting your stakeholders, right? So convince, persuade of the value because you're going to gain insight into this problem. So we're engaging and persuading from the start. You need a strong argument. Why is this study relevant and for who? That begins in the introduction, and then you give more evidence and details in the lit review. And then, of course, on in your other chapters. You need to connect all the evidence to highlight the value. So think right now, just write down a few key words about your exact research problem and go back and check that that is very clear in the introduction and that you've expanded on it in the lit review. All right, so then what counts as an original contribution? You could have one of these, you could have a combination of these, but basically you're building on previous work. Now, some of you may be working in a field where there's barely any research. So, you know, you might not have very many bricks in your wall there. You might be starting the foundation there. But for most of us, we'll be putting another brick in an already established wall. So your original contribution can be around the methodology. You can be cross-disciplinary approach that's not usually done in your research area, maybe some new extending a theoretical approach. Maybe there's stakeholders that haven't been previously studied in depth. Maybe there's some current debates. So, and your research impact usually relates to theory, policy, or practice. Maybe even more than one of these. So write in your notes or in the chat, what's the contribution you're hoping your study might make? Even if you're not sure yet, it's just really good to have some keywords there and have those in your mind. So we had here your problem. Here, we're looking at the contribution. They need to obviously relate and intertwine. So whatever you're thinking for your problem, then your contribution is going to give us insight into solving that problem, isn't it? That's a good one in the chat. Influencing policy regarding treatment of HIV treatments for people with disabilities. Good. So that impact will relate to policy and then ultimately towards practice. So what you should be seeing is a really nice connection between the research problem and then your contribution. And then we want the reader to explicitly see that, and we're persuading them that this is a significant and valuable contribution. So here's your middle chapters. This is the middle part of your story, isn't it? And heading towards the end. So the lit review, even though you've introduced everything in the introduction, the lit review is where we really solidify that with our evidence from the literature. And you're really beginning to explain why we should care, what's the value of your study, and persuade the reader. Then in your methodology, you've got this robust and appropriate research design that's going to yield reliable and valid data, then you're going to implement the study, and then those results will lead to more evidence, and also, again, that's value. Okay, and then from that, you've got your results and your discussion, the evidence to interpret the results, and then you've got your conclusion. So see the arrow down the bottom, it's iterative, you're going backwards and forwards. Now, you would have written a good lit review for your research proposal. You must go back and refine, revise, and add, okay? So you're advancing your argument all the way through, and you are persuading the reader of the value of your study. So how are we going to do this? Regular critical discussions with supervisors. I can't emphasize this enough. I know that sometimes you don't talk to your supervisors all that often. It's often via track changes. But if you can have a meeting, and as I said, a really good idea is pop a couple of slides up, you know, and then that's a good starting point rather than this big long document. Okay, sometimes, you know, you can just take some of the dot points there, and it just begins that good critical discussion. With your data analysis, take your time, write all your thoughts down, go back to the literature if you need, raise questions, consider different answers. The light bulbs will start turning on. Just keep writing what you're thinking. Also, remember your dialogue is with the reader, which is why we need to practice our dialogue with our supervisors and our peers. Let the reader know everything that you're thinking. Go moving backwards and forwards between the chapters to figure out a good structure for the readability. Keep the reader in the loop. When you're stuck, flip the way you're looking. Look from a perspective of another stakeholder, maybe. So if you're looking at something to do with education and your participants are teachers and you're stuck, come and look at from the view of the students, maybe from the view of the school, and see if that helps you to really get an idea of the data analysis and what is coming out from that. And also pose some questions to people who aren't close to your research. Sometimes they can see things because we're very tunnel vision. It might help to broaden your outlook. All right, so let's look at examiners now. They're pretty important readers. So you were talking about what you think examiners will look for in your thesis. You can pop on your mic or write them in the chat if there was anything that you came up with. Now, remember before we looked at QT's expectations, they're pretty similar. So who are your examiners? Well, your supervisory team will nominate them. They don't know who you are. You don't know who they are. But we know they'll be experts broadly in your field, but they're not experts in your study. So don't be intimidated by the examiners. You're the expert in your study. We need to let them become experts in it as well by the way you write your beautiful narrative. So they are part of your research community. They're going to be interested in your study, but of course we want to engage and persuade and maintain that interest. There's been a bit of research around thesis examination because it is an invisible process. It is nice for us to know what they do. We've talked about this in a few of the sessions that, the writing sessions that I have. So let's look again. First impressions, so important. Think about how you feel when you're reading a book, even a research article. It's first impressions, isn't it? We decide very quickly if we want to go ahead and read. Your examiners need to read, of course, but those first impressions are so important. They are judging the quality of a thesis. We'll look at how do they do that and how do they work through it and what annoys them. But good news. Examiners begin the process by saying this thesis will pass, and they're excited and they're looking forward to reading. So we're not going to disappoint. as we said, first impressions. They judge a thesis quite quickly, not to decide if they're going to read it or not, because of course they're going to read it, but whether it's going to be enjoyable or hard work. So let's make it enjoyable from the very first minute. We want those initial chapters to be fabulous. They often form these first impressions by the end of the lit review, so you don't have much time to impress them. Now, those first impressions, they're not irreversible, but they certainly influence their frame of mind. So keep that in mind. Those first 2 chapters must be very persuasive and engaging and do all the things that the examiner is expecting. So don't leave these till the last minute, okay? The abstract as well. Proofread carefully, check your reference list is correct, check your table of contents, they're going to look at that. Subheading should tell a story. You want them to look at your table of contents and go, oh, great, that looks fantastic, can't wait. So what do they want you to demonstrate, particularly in those beginning chapters? That the problem is significant. We said that was the key, didn't we? All right. Introduction, persuade, why we need insight into this research problem, who is the problem impacting, what are the effects of that. You need to show your comprehensive understanding of the field and the issues under investigation. That's demonstrated in the lit review. They're going to be looking for evidence of your findings being valuable. That's your common thread all the way through, your persuasiveness. And then in those final discussion and conclusion, you're giving the evidence and stating explicitly, this is the significant contribution, or contributions plural. They want to see your critical analysis. They want to know and see the appropriateness of the research design. They want everything explained and supported with evidence. Also bear in mind, for a PhD, you may have an international examiner, so your research setting will need to be clearly explained. So it doesn't really matter where it's set, but if there's an international examiner, whether it's Australia or another country, they certainly will need, the examiners need to know exactly the research setting, so be very clear. So how do you achieve this quality that they're anticipating and wanting? Make the thesis reader friendly. So that comes back to your feedback, doesn't it? Again, your readability, your connections between the sections and your chapters, your structure, your common thread. Everything we're talking about today is interconnected, isn't it? Right? You need the feedback to test the readability. This is a big document, right? Those big picture strategies, stepping back. But also the key themes for the session. Stay motivated, you can do this. Keep your confidence up by improving those drafts. Take control of the writing process. Seek the feedback and know what the expectations and processes are. So there's no surprises when you're getting into those final weeks. Know exactly what you need to do. So when examiners are working through a thesis, so this research that has investigated what examiners do, they've reported some different strategies. Some read the thesis from cover to cover without really making any notes, and then they come back and read more critically, and they might read it 2 or 3 times. Some will read the abstract, the introduction, and then jump to the conclusion. Then they'll go and read the other chapters. Some read the table of contents, the first and last chapters, to get an idea of the quality. Some look at the references straight away to see that the writers are there who should be there. Then they might read through it slowly. So we can't guess where the examiners are going to start. So single chapter needs to stand alone, but also be connected. You need to have that balance, and you need the beginning of every chapter to be explicit and clear and remind the aims, remind the problem. Okay, so for the examiners, no matter which chapter they begin with, they've got a very good idea of what you're doing and why. So help them work through the thesis. Let them skip around. We've got it covered. Have a look at your table of contents. Does each chapter stand alone if needed? Does every chapter have that clear beginning couple of paragraphs to restate those common threads? Okay, we're not going to annoy the examiners. Can you imagine if they read the whole thesis and they're still not exactly sure what's going on? Obviously, that's bad, and that's not going to happen to us. Poor literature review is probably not going to bode well. So that's what I was saying. Your literature review needs to be great. And that's going to take time and a lot of hard work, but it will be worth it. They will read your lit review, be happy, impressed, and happy to keep going. You really need to justify that research design and have that clear link with the research questions. And you need to present your findings in a clear, well-structured way. Again, feedback, proofreading, making sure everything's formatted correctly and that the structure is clear. Lead the reader through. Tell them the structure, what that they can expect. A few more things that annoy them. There's a lot, isn't there? But we're going to avoid all of these. They want consistency with capitalization, spelling, subheadings. Of course, it needs to look good. It needs to be presented well. No typos, no errors. We want beautiful presentation. The quality, you're proud of this document. It needs to look good. Make sure your referencing conventions are accurate and consistent. But you can see how, from an examiner's perspective, if the structure is clear and the document itself is presented in a, adhering to the convention and there's consistency and it just looks good, that will bode really well that you're already making them happy, and that's what we want. So when it's time to submit, which you are heading very quickly towards, you're going to submit the best document that you can submit. There's no doubt about that, okay? But also on the flip side, remember, we can't guess what the examiners are going to think. So if we've got that good presentation and structure, that's an excellent start. Now, there could be things you're agonizing about. It could be to do with your lit review. Have I added enough? Do I need more? Is it, as long as the readability is there and you've ticked off all the purposes and it's clear and persuasive, we can't guess what they're going to pull out as something that they think that can be improved. And oftentimes it's not what you think it might be. It's something completely different. Remember, for me, it was my methodology chapter, and I was really worried about it from the feedback of the supervisor. I addressed everything, but I still thought, I don't know. And they didn't mention anything about the methodology. There was nothing in there that I had to address. So I was agonizing, but examiners didn't even, there was other things that they wanted me to address. So yes, it'll be the best you can be. And we just need to wait and see what they think should be addressed to improve the document. And they'll give you the examiner reports and the comments, and then you can worry about them then. So once you press that submit, enjoy, relax. All right, so just some final tips before we have time for our Q&A. I know there's been a lot of information. So please go back and have a look with the slides. How did you go with the reflection and the thesis audit? So even if you've only jotted down a couple of notes, hopefully that will help you as you progress towards completion, but also just remember that reflecting and planning, they can go hand in hand and are really, really important to reduce the anxiety and to, you know, have a really good plan where you're reducing the obstacles and doing everything you can to get this document where it needs to be. So one way to do this is hone your proofreading skills. Okay, so yes, you're getting all the feedback, but also we need to proofread before we send off for the feedback. So proofreading is not writing. This is this writing up time is time to really get your proofreading skills effective. I would say print and read aloud if you can, and take your time. All right. Now, know your weaknesses by seeking feedback. So if you know you make some grammar errors, they are things you should be looking for when you proofread. If you know you're not always explicit and clear quite enough, that's what you're looking for. So whatever it is, if you know sometimes your topic sentences aren't on track, that's what you're looking for. My other tip with your proofreading is divide between your macro and your micro. Your macro is your big picture. It's your sections, your chapters, and the whole document. Your micro is the cohesion. It's the paragraph level. It's very hard to check your sentences, your words, and each paragraph, and also to look at the bigger picture. So my advice is separate those two things out. We actually have a proofreading class on the 6th of December. That might be helpful for some of you. Please come along to that. I'll give you the link in a little bit. Word actually has a read aloud function. If you didn't know, you could always use that. The reason why I say print is because when we're reading on the screen, our eyes skip. Okay, we don't sort of see it all. Whereas if we print, you know, we're going to catch everything. And reading aloud means you can hear when something's strange. You're not just relying on your eyes. Research writing conventions, that's your referencing style. You've probably, for a lot of you, you sort of let that go at this point. Now's a good time to delve in and make sure you're adhering to your referencing style. It governs everything to do with your document. Always have attention to detail with these writing conventions, because as we saw, that's something that annoys examiners if you don't have consistent and adhering to the conventions. Now, I know most of you would be using EndNote or some kind of software. Please still go and manually check your reference list. You're probably just about to fall off your chair by me saying that, but the accuracy of the reference list is only as good as your data entry. Okay, so if you've made an error in your data entry, your reference list will be incorrect. You do need to manually check it. Make sure you set up your long Word document. That's your pages, your headings, margins, page breaks, making sure your fonts are consistent. There's information on HiQ to help with that. I'm going to put that into the chat. So basically what I'm saying here is don't leave these things till the last minute. You'll go crazy. Okay. You need to, sometimes these things take a long time, so schedule it in. We talked about this before. You might want professional proofreading or editing. Proofreader corrects surface errors. Professional editors will focus on the writing quality and the expression. So consider the timing. This is a discussion for your supervisors. See what they think. Now, hopefully you already know your liaison librarian. But if you don't, and you do need some kind of library help, just put the link in the chat. They can help with all sorts of things, okay? Check in with them. Especially if it's to do with your referencing software. Manchester Phrase Bank. Again, if you haven't had a look, I recommend you do. Lots of great resources there. Sometimes if we're stuck, it's a really good place to go. All right, so at the beginning, we posed some key themes, didn't we, to keep us on track, to keep us confident and motivated and really progressing towards where we want to get to these goals of submitting your thesis. Exciting. Remember your passion. Don't shut out your friends and family. I don't know. Mine stopped asking me how it was going, because I'd say, I don't want to talk about it. But what you can do is say, hey, it's going fine. And you know how you could help me? You could help by being a cheerleader and really encouraging me and, you know, maybe taking me out to a movie when I need a break or whatever it might be. Okay, so it is, I know it is hard because no one outside of academia can often understand that this is hard. Why haven't you finished yet? That's a good question, isn't it? So try to put a positive spin on those sorts of questions if you can. Take control of that writing process. You are in control of this document. It's not controlling you. Keep writing, keep thinking, keep seeking feedback. Really, if you can, if you have that relationship with your supervisors, let them know you're struggling. If you don't feel like you can confide in your supervisors, find someone who you can confide in. Don't forget, we have counselors at QT. Your mental health and well-being is super important. So if you're struggling, open up and get some help. Make sure you seek feedback widely and regularly, not just your supervisors. Try not to isolate yourself. Now's the time. You really need to be getting that feedback on the readability, and you'll see your progression will increase and speed up. And make sure you're aware of all the information on HiQ. Don't forget that GRED is here for you as well. Then you are going to let it go. You're going to press that submit button and rejoice. Unfortunately, when you do submit, nothing comes out of the computer. There's no fireworks, there's no streamers. Maybe there should be. Maybe you can have your own ready to go. Maybe that's what you can ask your family and friends to do for you. So when is that time going to come, you're wondering? Well, it's going to be a joint decision. Your supervisory team and you will say, you know what, we are ready. And as we said, you're going to be agonizing about things that we can never guess what the examiners are going to think. But they will read it thoroughly, and you know they will have comments, of course, but you're going to do the best that you can do. You are going to give them everything that they need. You're not going to do any of those things that annoy them. You're going to have a beautiful presentation, and you're going to have that nice persuasive narrative, and they will enjoy reading it. There's, you know, when I do thesis editing and when I read people's thesis, I enjoy it. You know, everyone's doing such brilliant research. Keep that in mind. Stay confident and motivated. And it seems like there is no light at the end of the tunnel sometimes, but there is. You're so close. Hang in, and, you know, the time will come to celebrate and rest. And then what's next? Well, first thing will be getting up on that stage to accept your degree. That's the fun thing. In the chat, I'm going on a holiday the moment I hit submit. Great idea. You do need to do something to celebrate, that's for sure. All right. What about your main takeaways for today? Make your thesis interesting, persuasive, and readable, and make that value clear. Remember your common thread all the way through. You want the examiner reading it going, yep, oh, I see. Ooh, interesting. Can't wait to read more. We don't want them to want to put it down. Seek feedback widely, regularly, reflect on your progress. So if you've put in some strategies to minimize some obstacles, see how they go. Do you need some different strategies? Are your strategies working? Okay, so reflecting is good, but reflect in a positive way, not a negative way. We want to keep that confidence and motivation and take some time out. I do know that feeling when we're not writing our thesis and we feel bad. Oh, I should be doing some writing. Yes, most of the time, yes, but sometimes you need to rest your mind and your body and reach out if you're struggling. So as we said, today's resources, the slides are already up on Blackboard. There was a lot today, wasn't there? Point of that, of there being a lot though, is to keep you motivated and increase your confidence, not to make you worried. So please don't be worried, you will get there. And if you could take a minute to let me know what you thought of today. I always read your feedback. I take it on board and I improve for the next time, just like you improve your documents. So as I said, if you want to know more, Tuesday, 6th of December, we've got a proofreading writing circle. I'm just going to pop the link in the chat for that one. Don't forget that Blackboard link. There's all the each of the chapters. We've got those writing circle recordings that might be interesting for you, because we went through that quite quickly, didn't we, of what each chapter needs to have. So these might help if you wanted to pop into Blackboard. But of course, we'll have them again in 2023. Also coming up, we've got a Writers Wellbeing Lounge next week. We've got a HDR Career Connections. A lot of you could be thinking about your career, which is good. Self-sourcing an internship, that's a good one as well. So a lot going on. Still got a few events at GRED in these next few weeks. So of course, you've got Blackboard, HiQ, the HDR Matters that gets emailed to you, the skills assessment tool. If you did that skills assessment tool at the beginning of your candidature, it's always good to pop in near the end and see how you have improved those skills. It'd be good to use for your CV and your career in the future. All right, Q&A time. Good, we're right on time. Has anyone got any questions? You can turn on your mic. You can pop in the chat. Just had a question about word limits for the MPhil. I would pop into HiQ. They would have all that information in there. Ah, there we go. Lovely, Santha. Thank you. 40,000. So just remember, I had the 80,000 for the PhD, 40,000. So yes, you're still going to have some chapters that are longer and some that are shorter, of course. So a little bit more compressed. But everything's still the same. Still got to engage the reader, persuade, show the value of your research. Everything's still there, but just in a shorter form. Good question. And would help with your planning, of course, as well. Okay. Any other questions? Hopefully you're all feeling motivated, had some time to reflect, and then you're ready for that hard work and heading towards that submit button and ready for your celebration. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. It was lovely to see everybody. Good luck. Take care of yourself. I might see you in the proofreading session or a peer feedback session. If not, have a fabulous end to the year and happy new year. And I'll see you in 2023 if I don't see you in these last few weeks. Thank you.